So we'll just take a look at those highlighted notes and all right. So no surprise, this is just a traditional South American shaman. He's getting ready to perform a ceremony using the psychoactive, they call it ayahuasca. It does contain some DMT and a few other things. Yes, question? Yes, they're done. So you should see 3 points added to your highest exam score of your exam 1 and exam 2. Mm-hmm. And also I added the 2 points from Friday, the extra clicker session that we had on Friday. So I like people to know, anyway, that's DMT, a traditional indole psychedelic. So these are your notes. I went ahead and, like I say, for the alcohol, almost everything in the notes. So simple things that people miss, that I'm not sure why, recognizing that ethyl alcohol is the only kind of alcohol we're talking about here. That's the psychoactive drug. The oldest drug, the most abused drug, that's alcohol. And when we talk about the first process that humans use to make alcohol, they were using a natural reaction that occurs in nature. It was fermentation. So all you need is some sugar source. You have a reaction starts when you add yeast. For every molecule of sugar, the yeast will produce 2 molecules of ethyl alcohol and 2 molecules of carbon dioxide. So there's a limit to how concentrated the alcohol can be if you're just using fermentation. Right around 14%, that's enough alcohol to start killing the yeast in the solution. It actually becomes kind of like a disinfectant at that point for them. So you can't go any higher than that, and you usually don't want to push it all the way up to 14%. So you need to know what the limits are for fermentation. And just know the term congeners. They're impurities that are left over from the solution that contain the sugar, the yeast, whatever the source of the sugar is. You might have leftovers from the fruit you used, whatever your source is. They're not always bad. That's why different fermentation products taste different, smell different, have different colors. But if you happen to be allergic to one of these congeners, you can get have a kind of a really bad hangover contributed partly by impurities that are in the particular fermentation product. Some people are allergic to hops, that's in beer. Some people are allergic to tannins, that's in red wine. All right, so the 2 main fermentation products are beer and wine. So I'm not sure why people would miss this. I've asked a question like, which of the following compounds is not a distillation product? So the 2 fermentation products are beer and wine. Distillation products would be anything made from a still. So if I had Everclear, if I had whiskey, if I had vodka, those are all distillation products. If I threw in beer, that's not a distillation product. Okay, that's just fermentation. So know that beer and wine are the fermentation products, and have an idea of the concentrations. 4% for alcohol on average in the United States, and for wines, topped off at about 12%. That's something that you would find maybe in a robust red Italian wine. I'm not going to ask you about port or sherry. So I've had people say, when I say, what's the average percentage of beer? They put 20%, which would mean that NIOSA would be an OD city if people were doing that, if you imagine 20% alcohol in beer. It's about 4%, and not even that for NIOSA. Okay, so people were happy with fermentation products until somebody figured out how to make a still. Now you have distillation products. So you take what you ferment, you put it in a still, and you can concentrate the alcohol, the flavors that are there. Just an example, when you distill wine, you get brandy. Okay. So liquors do have a higher percentage alcohol. The highest percentage alcohol in a beverage I mentioned in my notes is Everclear. It's about 95% alcohol. So in that little bottle, 95% of the molecules are alcohol, 5% of them are water. You can't really have anything that's sitting at 100% alcohol, because even when you uncap it, it's going to suck moisture out of the air. So you never want to go near even diluting or trying to drink anything that would have 100% alcohol in it, because the people who make it have to add denaturers to it to prevent it from taking up water from the air, and those are toxic. So 90% are how we mainly describe alcohol, but if you see an older bottle, you might see the alcohol content described as proof. Just know that 1 proof equals 0.5%, or 1% equals 2 proof if I ask you to make that conversion. Okay, this is the only drug I went you step by step through the metabolic process. So people, 99% of the time, are going to ingest alcohol orally. There is a way to heat up alcohol and try to inhale the fumes. There have been cases of people trying to do an alcohol enema, but let's stick to just drinking it. Okay? So on an empty stomach, you can actually absorb 20% of the alcohol through the walls of the stomach. Alcohol is a pretty fat-soluble compound. Like most of it actually gets absorbed in the small intestine, like most things you would ingest. So how could you speed up what happens if you're heating a drink? Drink a warm, like hot toddy on an empty stomach. Heat speeds up the absorption of alcohol. Empty stomach speeds up the absorption of alcohol. Carbonation can stimulate the stomach and get it to dump faster into the intestines. So there are ways for you to slow down your absorption if you don't want to get intoxicated too fast. So your metabolism is something that takes a while for your body to do. There's no way to speed up alcohol metabolism. Caffeine, fresh air, cold shower. You may be a little bit more alert, but if you've got 8 hours worth of alcohol to metabolize, it's going to take you 8 hours to metabolize it. So some things that do affect it would be if you're a heavy drinker and you've got tolerance, very small person, if you have a lot of other drugs in your system. But it's a pretty set rate for most people. So I stepped you through what goes on inside a liver cell. Start out with a molecule of ethyl alcohol. There's an enzyme that's found in liver cells called alcohol dehydrogenase. It's not just alcohol that it's the first step in drug metabolism. It's the first step in a number of different drug metabolisms. You do get tolerant because your liver cells, if they're required to keep metabolizing something like this, they make more of this enzyme. So this is an enzyme. It's a protein made to do something in your body. Alcohol dehydrogenase converts ethyl alcohol to the first metabolic product, acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is then converted to acetic acid. And it is a fuel for cells. Cells can then burn that and produce a little carbon dioxide, water, and energy. So there's calories in alcohol. It's the only drug I've mentioned that you have calories. That's why you can burn it in your car. Those carbon-hydrogen bonds in alcohol have energy to them. This is the name of a drug here. It's not an enzyme. It's a drug that will stop the metabolic process right there. So you can't get to the end stage where you burn the alcohol as fuel. You get a buildup of acetaldehyde. It can make you nauseous, not feel very good. And it's a way for people who want to stop drinking. It gives them a little extra willpower to say, no, I can't. I'm taking medication. So it is useful. People are now being forced to take antabuse, which doesn't really work. If you have no intent of stopping the drinking, you will drink even with antabuse, no matter how sick you get. The definition, of course, blood alcohol content, BAC. Everybody needs to know that. It's used to determine whether you are legally at a limit to operate a car or heavy machinery, they always say. It's the percent alcohol in 100 mils of blood. Of course, they don't need 100 mils. You can extrapolate. If you're a 175-pound male, if you've had 5 drinks in 2 hours, you're going to be over the legal limit, 0.095. That's the only BAC you need to know. There's a whole table in your book that gives you for women versus men, different body weights, how many drinks you've had in the past 2 hours. So you can calculate your BAC. It's actually not in the notes, but I want to mention it. I'll ask you about breathalyzers. I keep forgetting to put that in there. A breathalyzer works by measuring how much ethanol vapor you're exhaling from your lungs. So it's related to the percentage of alcohol in your blood. Every time the blood passes through the lungs, we're warm enough, our body temperature is warm enough, a little bit of that ethanol is vaporized and comes out with your exhalation. They just extrapolate back percent vapor that you're exhaling. They can calculate what the alcohol is in your blood. So the rest of the notes here pretty much know everything. So what I would do, of course, as I always tell people, I take the notes in little chunks. First work on one, low dose effects. Can I name the 4 low dose effects, without my notes? So that's how you study. You take little chunks at a time. See if you can tell someone the 4 things. I like numbering things because that makes me know, oh, what's the 4th one? So, of course, I've said way at the beginning, reading notes is not studying. Reading notes is reading. Studying is taking little chunks of it. Can you tell someone to, or think about it, or list it, or say it to a study partner or yourself without your notes? Then you know it. High dose episodes. If you look at these, I think most people would understand, even generally, you're going to be impaired in your coordination. That's why I think this chapter is easy. Most people have been exposed to someone who's in a high dose episode. They can look at them and say, oh, they're a little bit unstable, they're slurring their speech, their emotions are very volatile, either laughing or crying. You have to get a little bit more personal, intimate relationship to find out if their sexual performance is impaired. But you may have seen someone who actually has alcohol poisoning. Usually it's a first-time drinker who doesn't have any tolerance for it, or a alcoholic or a drug addict who has taken an extreme amount of alcohol. That's why alcohol is so toxic. You need a lot of it to get drunk once you're tolerant. You get around BAC 0.4, it's like 0.4 grams in 100 mils of blood. You're getting close to shutting down your organs. It's called alcohol poisoning. So I just kind of give you a threshold there. That's what some people have been above that and somehow still functioning. There are a few unusual things in the literature. But remember, people are different. There are outliers. There have been people who have died from smaller amounts of alcohol. There are people who have been actually driving with a 0.6 level. That's a record, I think, in the US. So it does vary. There are outliers. Everybody mostly knows about a hangover. It's actually the toxic effects of a high dose of alcohol. Didn't talk about it a lot with other drugs because the other drugs usually aren't as toxic. You can have, after staying up all night with some of the stimulants, we talked about ecstasy, massive release of serotonin, so you can feel confused, a little down the next day. This is specifically not just confusion, but your body is taking a while to overcome this toxicity. There's a fluid shift when you're laying down. Fluid goes to your head and neck. You're all puffy. You have a headache. Your gut can be irritated if you didn't eat much. No matter how much you're in bed, you're not getting normal sleep. You're tired. You're very thirsty. Part of that metabolic step is you actually use a couple molecules of water to burn that alcohol for every molecule. Even though you make one, when you do the energy, you're still in a water deficit. You can't really concentrate. And some people get very depressed the next day. Maybe they're having low levels of serotonin. Actually, it's a number of different neurotransmitters. So people who use alcohol to treat their depression, it's actually feed forward. They feel more depressed, they drink more. They feel more depressed, they drink more. It's not a good way to self-medicate. So now we're talking about people who get high doses a lot of the time. Usually they're an alcoholic. 10 to 12% of the adults who drink are going to be vulnerable to this addiction. They'll be diagnosed. That's about the same for any drug we talk about. 10 to 12% are vulnerable. Early signs of a problem would be blackouts. You do stuff, but you don't have any memory. Part of your brain has been turned off. I don't go into details here, but you should recognize tolerance, and it happens with every drug. Didn't highlight it. What I do want you to know is that withdrawal from alcohol is the most serious type of withdrawal. Over time, if you've been drinking every day, your GABA receptors are desensitized because alcohol works by enhancing the activity of GABA receptors, keeping everything calm. When your GABA receptors are downregulated and the alcohol's gone, you can't keep your your brain calm enough to avoid sweating, trembling. Some people have seizures, uncontrolled activity of neurons in the brain. You can pass out. People actually can hallucinate during withdrawal. Delirium tremens is an old term. It means you're delirious, hearing voices, and you're trembling. You don't hear as much today. So how about people who drink for 50 years? They drink every day. They drink a lot. So long-term effects means whether or not you're an alcoholic, usually there isn't a big overlap there. There have been people who are heavy social drinkers who can still, control their drinking a little bit. That's the hallmark of not being an addict, is that when you say, I'm only going to have 2 drinks, you only have 2 drinks. So you still have an off switch. But in any case, even if you're not an alcoholic, long-term high-dose effects of alcohol are toxic. It can depend on your genes, how sensitive you are to some of this toxicity. The one organ that has the majority of the effects is your liver. So 2 signs of liver being damaged by alcohol. The first one is fatty liver. The liver stores calories from food while it burns the alcohol. Sometimes you get this extra calories deposited as fat on your liver. That is not normal. So your liver puffs out, it's tender, that's the first sign you got a problem. Fatty liver is actually reversible if you stop drinking. Okay, you can recover from it. It's enlarged, it's tender. Now the next step, if you don't stop drinking, is cirrhosis, where liver cells start to die. It's irreversible. And so we get down to about 20% of liver function, you're going to need a transplant to survive. Heart problems, enlarged heart, the nerve fibers in the heart that coordinate your heartbeat can be affected. You have irregular heart rhythms. High blood pressure, your arteries get stiff and they can't regulate your blood pressure as well. Atrophy means to shrink. You can actually do a CAT scan or a PET scan and see a smaller brain tissue. And these ventricles that contain cerebrospinal fluid, they fill up. So the brain shrinks, ventricles get bigger so that you're filling up your skull. Interesting, even some of this is reversible. So then we now know that your brain, you do make more nerve cells as you get older. That was always a dogma. Oh, you're born with your nerve cells. Now we know that there are stem cells in the brain that can start making new neurons. So there's even hope for someone in this condition if they stop drinking. So because of these effects, sometimes people will seem confused. Their memory is affected. Dementia means loss of your cognitive ability. It can happen from drugs, in this case alcohol. It can also happen from Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, a number of different conditions. Dementia is not a normal aging condition. If you get demented as you get older, it's a disease. It's not natural aging. So something's going on besides natural aging. Your stomach, what happens with a lot of people who begin to become addicted to alcohol is they purposely drink on an empty stomach. Because they don't want, they're drinking to get the buzz. So they know if they eat, the alcohol absorption is slowed down. They don't want that. So all this drinking on an empty stomach, gastritis, your stomach becomes inflamed. And you begin to wear away the protective lining of the stomach to produce ulcers. So sometimes people start spitting up blood, bright red blood. That's a sign you've got a bleeding ulcer. It needs to be treated. Because these ulcers are related to bacteria in your stomach. So when you irritate the stomach that much, it gives those bacteria a way to get in there and eat away at the lining of the stomach. At this point, you're not overweight. A lot of healthy people who drink a lot of beer and alcohol actually get kind of fat, put on extra weight. As you get older and you get to this point, you're skinny. Because all you're doing is drinking alcohol. You're actually malnourished. You don't get any vitamins, minerals, or protein from that alcohol, so your body starts to look skinny arms and legs, big belly. The classic spider look of an older alcoholic. All right, so just going through this list of other problems. People who are depressed or anxious or have a mental problem also sometimes turn to alcohol. It makes them feel better briefly. But if you try and use a drug like alcohol long-term to treat a problem, it actually makes it worse. So a lot of people, when they drink, it makes them feel better for that first few times. They like it. But years later, it's actually making things worse. So depression and anxiety are the two main disorders that are found in alcoholics. And you have to figure out, did they have it before and they were trying to self-medicate, it's worse, or did the alcohol actually contribute to the depression and anxiety? Because during hangovers, you're depressed. If you don't have your GABA receptors active in the full, you get anxious, you can tremble. All right, motor vehicle accidents, big issue in Texas. 50% of motor vehicle fatalities indicate alcohol use. Somebody had, sometimes it's the victim who died, sometimes it's the person who creates the accident, but they're impaired when it happens. Suicides, 25% of suicide victims are drunk. They're at least 0.10 BAC. Lowers your inhibitions, you're not thinking straight, you're depressed. Alcoholics have twice the suicide rate of the general population. So again, alcohol, usually you're not going to see an alcoholic early. Alcohol, because you're taking it orally, doesn't drive you to addiction as quickly as a drug you smoke, where you become habitual compulsive user. Marijuana is a little iffy on that, but smoking can push you to kind of doing this behavior over and over. So it takes a little longer because people are imbibing it orally. So you usually don't see 25-year-old alcoholics. You're going to see 40, 50, 60-year-old alcoholics. Now, at this point, because of their alcoholism, they may have lost a lot of support. Family doesn't want to deal with them. People, they won't admit it, but drug addicts do feel shame, and they're distraught knowing that, looking at their behavior, what they've done, hurting their family, all this stuff, they've lost their job. This can drive a person to suicide even if they weren't depressed to begin with. All right, fetal alcohol syndrome. You just have to know the syndrome. You don't have to know the milder fetal alcohol effects. So a syndrome means there's certain symptoms that have to be present for you to get the diagnosis. So one of the things you're going to look for is small size. You lag behind growth in the fetus. Newborns are often low weight, small. They don't seem to be thriving. Central nervous system abnormalities. There can be a higher risk of congenital abnormalities where you have failure of the spinal cord to close, that's spinal bifida. Sometimes you have failure of the upper palate to close, that's cleft palate. These things can be increased. You can have more risk of hydroencephaly. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong with the central nervous system during the fetus development. They can happen without alcohol, but the incidence can go up. So you need to have at least, I think, 4 out of these 5 structural abnormalities of the head and face. This was very distinct. The middle of the face tends to be small, so your eyes, nose are kind of close together. Smaller eyes, extra skin fold around the eyes, no crease in the upper lip, usually a thin upper lip. That's what caught the eye of the pediatric nurses. It's because of the presence of alcohol during critical stages. Delayed intellectual development. They might catch up, but they may not. So babies have certain things that they do. They lift their head, they follow light, they roll over. Those are all kind of steps to you developing, controlling your body, then following language, responding to stimulation. They may be impaired there because of some damage to the CNS. Don't have to know about that fetal alcohol. So this isn't something that happens from a glass of wine or a couple beers. This is something that happens when the blood alcohol peaks. There is early, first trimester, heavy exposure. So many things are happening in terms of nerve growing, synapses forming, formation of the face, connections of things in the spinal cord. And that presence of alcohol during all this going on can cause things to not happen the way they should. So binge drinking is a big problem, where the mother drinks until she passes out or is very intoxicated. So you're usually going to see that in someone who's abusing alcohol or is addicted to alcohol. So they can't control their intake, even though, well, some of them don't know they're pregnant, but some do, and they still can't control their drinking. That's the big danger. All right, fetal alcohol syndrome, so know that. I think by now you know that sedatives can lower your inhibitions. You're kind of, all those parts of your brain that are most developed that say, hey, wait, think about this. Once they're intoxicated, your behavior changes. Suddenly people have a personality change. Suddenly things that they keep inside come out. So they could be, if you're with someone you love and they love you, it could be okay, desire. If it's not someone, if someone who doesn't like you, that's not okay. You can talk about something like rape there. Hatred of certain individuals, anger at the world, I'm going to get a gun and shoot my boss, whatever. This release of this pent-up, strong emotions can happen when the prefrontal cortex is kind of sedated. I didn't highlight this one. I mean, I think we all know that one of the things that happens when you've got these lower inhibitions, parts of your cortex are kind of intoxicated, you're not going to think ahead. You do dumb things. Some people seem to lose common sense, like getting a gun over a minor argument, okay? It makes no sense. So you cannot reason with a drunk person. I will tell you that now. Get away from drunk people, okay? And if there's a bunch of drunk people, definitely get away. You don't want to be caught in the crossfire of two groups of people that are intoxicated, venting with guns, knives, God knows what. You don't want to be there. So just start to back away because people get killed, like happened here at UTSA, the apartment complex. Big party, people arrive, aren't supposed to be there, somebody gets pissed, somebody pulls out a gun, shoots indiscriminately and kills a student, a lacrosse coach or somebody. He wasn't even involved with it. He just was there. He was a bystander. So if I give you any advice, just make your exit. You're doing the smart thing. Do not try and reason with these people. All right, look at homicides and rapes. 50% committed under the influence of alcohol. People who wouldn't normally ever do this can happen. Talk about groups of people being very intoxicated. Bad things happen. Okay, epidemiology. Who drinks, how much? I'm not going to ask you anything about what countries drink most. It's there in your notes, but I won't ask you guys that. I do want you to know this amazing statistic that 50% of people who arrive at emergency rooms and are admitted, there's alcohol involved. Doesn't have to be driving. Lots of things can happen. Falling off ladders. A lot of older people who drink at home start suffering a lot of falls. So that's a red light for family members. They start seeing bruises. These people are falling because they're drinking and getting impaired. Men drink more than women. That's part of it is body weight. Part of it is how the alcohol is metabolized. 40% of college students admit to binge drinking. This is kind of a pattern in an involvement when you have young people. They have a weekend. There's no classes. And they have a party, kegs, whatever. So it happens. So binging is where you have a lot of drinks in one episode. It's not a couple beers at happy hour. It's not sitting around a barbecue and maybe having some beers. Although people get extremely intoxicated, when you get to the end of the night, they've had 10 beers. They shouldn't be barbecuing at that point. Fire and alcohol, not a good mix. But what happens is that people who do this continually, more often than others, they may not be alcoholics, they're too young, but the frequency of drinks per week, GPA goes down. It's a negative correlation. You can think of reasons why that might be. You don't have to know about this, the ethnic groups. So I haven't had a chance to post the highlighted ones for the Chapter 6. I can just mention a couple of things here. So as I mentioned before, I will post these highlighted notes for you. On Wednesday, I can always finish this up. Oh, you guys have the, oh, I thought that was the other section. I am so sorry. That I will definitely correct for you. Okay. I will have to go ahead and do that from the 002, 1033-002 notes. So what I wanted to say is, at this point, I'd rather have you know exactly where you stand before you get to the finals. So feel confident that, you know, if you've got the 270, you're fine. I've had people just accept B's and don't take the final. But you should recognize this is the easiest exam. I mean, Chapter 5, I don't think any of you are struggling to comprehend what's going on here. You know how drugs work now. You know the effects of dose. There's just some unique things here. You might screw up with Chapter 6 if you get the categories of hallucinogens mixed up, but I think its notes are pretty straightforward. The second exam is the hardest exam. I actually saw a number of people kind of have their grade go down. Apparently some of them were studying some posted flashcards. They forgot that, well, why don't you just look at my notes? I provide everything you need. Study your notes. Know those little sections, you'll be fine. So when you get a grade that, let's say you're 5 points away from the grade you want. You have 265. You've got all your clicker points, all your quiz points, but you're 5 points away. You just have to score 5 more points on the final than you did on your lowest exam. So if you really stunk up the second exam and you got a 60, you need to get a 65 on the final. So that 60 drops, the 65 replaces it. Your total now becomes what you want. Okay? So I don't want people coming to me saying, oh, I don't want to take the final. Well, it's an opportunity for you. I let you drop an exam. And now you don't even want to do that. It's like, well, I don't want to do it. Well, fine, you don't have to do it. Just take the points, average you have now. But it's not a big problem. If you messed up the second exam, just do better than you did on that exam. Okay? All right, so every Monday, the Monday of every month, biology has a faculty forum. We all have to get together. I think it's from 1 to 2, sometimes 2:30. So today isn't the best day to probably see me in my office. But I will have my office hours tomorrow. I've got that 8:30 class. I've got the 11:30 class. I'll be up in my office after the 11:30 class, usually from 1 to 3. Please let me know. Please come see me. Wednesday's our last day. So Wednesday I have my office hours after your class. Pardon? The final for this class, it's in the syllabus. Anybody know it by heart? Wednesday, May 8th. Sorry. If you have more than one final, I'll work with you on that. Okay? Come see me. If you have more than one final, I can work with you on that. But I don't need taking the final early can be a problem for me because I've got 3 finals. But if you have a problem, I can work with you if you've got more than one on one day. Okay, yeah, we can do that. I'm not going to do it right now. I'd rather have you come to my office so I can write it in my calendar. Is that all right? So Tuesday from 1 to 3, Wednesday after this class from 12:30 to 2:30 or 3. Okay, it's in the syllabus, okay? Yeah, I got you. No, it's in the science building, and I think it's now called the Flawn Science Building. It's where they actually have the chemistry labs. There's been a number of people. Do you know where the science building is? Okay, 4th floor. Okay. All right.
I got a quick question. There's no requirement saying that we have to take the final, right?
No, I just explained that.
Right.
You have to drop one exam.
Okay, so I'm just confirming.
Okay, no problem. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no, I know some people, apparently there's professors who trick them or something. I won't do that.
Yeah, I've just got to make sure that I understood that.
You got it, you got it. So I got to drop one exam, so if you don't show for the final, that's the one.
Are you doing any more clicker questions?
No.
I have a 216 on it.
Well, I think, yeah, in that case, you probably would be all right. I do a little tiny bit of curving, but, I had clicker sessions so long. I mean, it's kind of like shot yourself in the head there.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
iClicker grade, because on Blackboard I see that there were 2 grades, like the one with the banner ID, and then the other one is like 8/8 or 10/10 and 12/12. It was separate.
Oh yeah, that's in the grade book, my grades.
Yes.
So that big table. So banner ID. I don't think
It's like the 3 letters and 3 numbers, and then the grade right next to it.
3 letters and.
It's under the iClicker grade information.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what's, so I didn't want to just keep posting things to your My Grades, so you had 20 columns under My Grades. So I collected the clicker points into 3, clicker 1, clicker 2, clicker 3. So that's what's there. So that table is not exactly accurate because I did give people 3 points every once in a while when the software failed. So if you look at under My Grades for clicker total, that's the total of clicker 1 for February, clicker 2 for March. You should have 30. You're fine. Yeah, I just went ahead and put the total so people could see. And if they're questioning about what is clicker 1, that's what's that information there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me my glasses here.
Right here, it should be all right, right?
Yeah, the official cutoff I think is 40, but I do a little curving. So you're going to be right at the edge there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.